We save all our webinars there. They just live there. It's kind of cool. Okay, we're live.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. It's 4 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Welcome to our 2025 virtual camp camp session. This is a follow-up to the full day workshops that we did in the summer in 5 different locations across the state. This is the first of 4 virtual sessions that we will be providing. But before we move on, I'm going to have you answer a poll that we have just to see what levels of school we have with us today. So it should be in the chat. We're almost there. So it looks like we have about 18% from the elementary level, 27% from the middle school, 30 from the high school, 12 work multiple levels in the district, and 12% are district administration. So we've got a good representation of districts across the board. So thank you for doing that. One more thing, if you would like to receive a certificate for attendance, please put your email in the chat as well, so that we know that we need to send that to you. We are your trainers today. My name is Nancy DiStefano. I am a certified school counselor and a former director of counseling. I am also retired as the assistant superintendent from the Washington, Saratoga, Hamilton, Essex, BOCES recently. And I work with NYSCA providing professional development. I'm going to have Mary introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Benezak. I'm the president-elect for NYSCA. I am a retired school counselor, just retired in June from Victor Schools after 35 years, finishing up as a high school counselor and coordinator of counseling there. I look forward to working with y'all today.
So as we move on, our agenda for today is really to spend a little bit of time with an overview of the regulations for the comprehensive school counseling guidance plans. We're going to spend some time on how to develop your district plan and your building level plan as well. Feel free to raise your hand and ask questions, or just unmute yourself and ask a question if there's something that you are wanting to get more information on. We'll do that throughout, and then we'll also have questions at the end. So the first section is going to be about the regulations and how they apply to the school counseling plan. These are the materials that we used in developing the workshop for today. We sent out to you the first 2. You should have received the SCD guidance and the district perspective ahead of the training. The other resources we're going to send, as well as a copy of this PowerPoint, to you after the workshop is done. So the third resource listed here is the use of the social emotional learning benchmarks. That is part of what the expectation is from state ed for us to include in our programs. Also the use of ASCA documents, which include the school counselor ethical standards, the school counselor professional standards, student competencies, and the ASCA mindsets and behaviors. And then the last one that we utilized is the CDOS standards, which help with the framework to prepare students for work readiness. All of which I'm sure you are familiar with. So when we look at the new Part 100.2J regulations, there are really several key changes that impact how school counselors develop and deliver their counseling services, curriculums, and plans. But when we looked at the changes, we determined that SCD really developed these changes with 4 premises in mind. Those premises are the date of effectiveness, the purpose behind the changes, the intent of the regulations, and the expected outcomes that they wanted when making the changes. So when we talk about the effective date, the amendments were adopted by the Board of Regents on July 1st in 2017, but they did not become effective for school districts until July 1st, 2019. So they have been in effect since 2019. The purpose behind the regulation change was really for students to have greater success and better opportunities for them. So that was the purpose behind the changes that they made in the regulations. When we looked at what the intent behind the regulations was, it really was to ensure that all students have access to a certified school counselor as well as a quality school counseling program across the state. So that was what the intent behind the regulations was when SED developed these. And then when we think about and look at what they wanted for outcomes, it really is aligning school counseling programs with the Every Student Succeed Acts, or ESSA, and amending the school counseling regulations to include provisions that would encourage schools as well as districts to adopt a whole school, whole community, whole child, multi-tiered model. So in the curriculum realm, there's a lot of MTSS changes that are going on, but they also want the school counseling programs to offer that multi-tiered model so that all students will receive certain levels of service, and then based on needs for students, the levels of service and the tiers will be modified to address more specific needs of the students. So those are really the 4 key changes that the underlying reasons for the changes. Now, in the guidance document that we sent out from SED, it was published and released in 2019. There are really 5 parts to that document. Those parts include program, services, plan, the advisory council, and certification. For our purposes, we're really only going to discuss the first 4 areas in our virtual workshops. We will not be discussing the certification section. In referencing SED's guidance document, the first section is really about the counseling program. This section includes reviewing and implementing the counseling program, what to include in the counseling core curriculum. It talks about the reference and what it means to access school counselors and a school counseling program for all students, as well as competencies of students. This includes the student competencies from the ASCA mindsets and behaviors, the SEL competencies, and the CDOS standards. It is encouraged when you are looking at the program aspect that you utilize standards for all 3 domains of the school counseling program, which include the career college readiness, academic skills development, and the social emotional development. Any questions so far? All right, the second section of the guidance document addresses services. This focuses really on the delivery of the core counseling curriculum. It addresses services that are provided by grade bands. So what you do for elementary, what services you provide middle school students, and what services you provide to high school students. It also addresses what direct and indirect services should include, and each of these areas has suggestions on implementation. The third section is the plan section, and this is really about the development of the plan and what needs to be included. It is recommended throughout the document that a team approach for development and review is utilized. Developing a process for program development is part of the plan. Review and updating it, using data to establish focus for goals, as well as for progress and reporting outcomes. This includes the written part of the plan as well. And the fourth part that we will talk about in one of our sessions is the advisory council. This section addresses the membership of the council, the number of meetings per year, the role of the council, reporting to the Board of Education, which also includes keeping minutes and the outcomes report. So those are the 4 areas that we're going to focus on in our virtual sessions. Today, we will focus on the program itself. So there are 11 key changes to the regulations that we really want to focus on. The first is the need to develop a comprehensive developmental school counseling guidance program. The second is that each public school district shall have a guidance program for all students, K-6 and 7 through 12. Each public school district shall develop a district plan, which sets forth the manner in which the district shall comply with the requirements. Each non-public secondary school shall provide a guidance counseling program for students in grades 7 through 12. So if you're a non-public school, your requirement is grades 7 through 12, not K through 12. The next one is that each school district shall ensure that all students in grades K-12 will have access to certified school counselors. If you are in the school districts of the city of Buffalo or New York City, you also have the requirement of a licensed guidance counselor that follows Part 80 of the Commissioner's regulations. Each school district shall develop a district-wide as well as a building-level school counseling plan. These shall be developed by or under the direction of certified school counselors. The recommendation is this is a team approach and that school counselors be part of the team if not leading the team. It needs to be updated annually. It needs to be available for review at the district office and at each school building. It also should be on the district's website. And then it adds the annual individual progress review plan to be developed for all students in grades 6 through 12. And this should reflect each student's educational progress and career plans. For students with disabilities, this plan should also be consistent with their IEP. Any questions so far on the regulation changes? Most of these you're familiar with at this point.
I do have one question. Hi,
Yes.
everybody. So I supervise the school counselors in northeastern Dutchess County, New York, at Millbrook Central School District, and we follow all of these regulations. But the only question I do have is if we have to, you mentioned the special ed piece and students' IEP goals, but how do we make sure like it's consistent with all of the kids district-wide because they all have different needs?
How do you make sure the individual progress review is consistent for all students?
Yes.
So as you're developing that IEP, a lot of times school counselors are part of that process when it comes to the career and educational plans.
Okay, so making sure that all of the students' IEPs for the college and career educational plans align to the advisory council plans.
Well, it would align with the individual education plan that you're developing. That's also done as a team.
Okay.
I'm echoing a lot. Maybe it's communicating with the CSE director to make sure that school counselors are included in some of those discussions as well. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not, Samantha.
Oh, sorry, I was just muted as I was talking. I apologize.
Okay.
I got it. Thank you.
Okay. Anything
I
else?
also have a question. Carrie Zales, representing Plattsburgh City School District. I'm wondering, for school districts that are attempting to create a systemic approach to this, is there a reason why school plans would be separate from a district plan? Because our fear in our district is that they then become 5 islands. So we want to embed our school plan in our district plan for accountability purposes. And I guess I'm wondering, is that allowed?
Yes. So you should work on developing the district-wide plan first, and then your building plans should be tied to that district plan. So once that district plan is done, the building plan is not as cumbersome to do. So we're going to talk about that process. Mary, did you have anything else to add about that? Because I think that's part of what we want people to understand is that it's not, you don't want them to all be separate, but they have to tie to each other too.
Right, the district plan is really the overarching goals, the mission and vision. And then the individual building plans is how you're going to achieve those in each building for each grade level. So they do align, they're not two separate things. They are linked to one another. And there are a few slides in the presentation coming up that I'll share with you more about
And as a
that.
follow-up to that, we have a number of initiatives in our district that include school counseling staff. It seems a bit redundant to embed the requirements, the programming, everything in those initiatives into this plan. Is it possible to just reference those in the plan if they are standing existing documents approved by our Board of Education?
So you have to have a comprehensive plan, a comprehensive school counseling and guidance plan. Can they be linked? Yes.
Yeah, listen, so I'm sorry, but when
No, I think,
No, 4 to
I think I
5.
understand I think I
4 to
understand the
5,
question.
I don't have to be in, but you walked in at 10 to 4 and I was trying to get something fixed on my computer. Anyway, all right, no worries. So I will give you a call later.
Whoever that is, I'm muting.
Bob, were you going to add something?
No, I was just going to add that, for example, if a district is using Second Step, I'm just using that as an example, as a district-wide thing, it might be referenced in the plan that counselors are participating in it. I think that's a good example.
Yeah, I'm more talking about, for example, our multi-tiered plan.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
is a major plan in our district that's approved by our Board of Education. Our school counseling people play an extremely important role.
Yep, yep.
Can that just be referenced?
I would say yes, Carrie.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I would
Thank
too,
you.
yeah.
Mhm.
Sean, you have your hand up.
Yeah, sorry. I was just wondering, within the regulations, you had mentioned all students K-12 need to have access to a school counselor. Are you going to go into that a little bit more in any of these sessions about what that has access to, what it means, or how districts should be interpreting that?
We'll talk a little bit more about that today and probably in future sessions as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So when we talk about our comprehensive school counseling and guidance plan, there are really 5 areas that the state requires. One is that you have a plan. 2, that you ensure that all students in grades kindergarten through 12 have access to a certified school counselor. To your question, Sean, that access does not mean that we have to have elementary school counselors. That's the best scenario and certainly one that we support. But the district has to determine what that access means, and that is a local decision. It could mean that you have someone assigned to work with elementary students, you have someone assigned to work with the teachers. Access is just that. It means access. It does not necessarily mean that every district has to hire more school counselors, because we know that that's not feasible, while it is the best practice. Access to a certified school counselor in the school district of the city of New York and the school district of city of the Buffalo include that licensed guidance counselor that is part of the Part 80 of the Commissioner's regulations. For students in grades kindergarten through 12, district and building level comprehensive developmental school counseling programs shall prepare students to participate effectively in their current and future educational programs as age appropriate. This is where those student standards are going to fit in, the SEL benchmarks, the CDOS standards, and student competencies. And additionally, the program shall be designed to address multiple student competencies, including career college readiness, academic and social emotional, and developmental standards.
I'm going to jump in and share a little bit about this document. It may be familiar to most of you. This document's been around for a while, since the regulations changed. It highlights the new components of the regulations. So while in the past, program delivery was indicated, now the 6th through 8th grade requirement is for individual progress reviews to be performed in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, as well as grades 9 through 12. And that's just looking at the academic progress of the student, the career goals or interests, their strengths, and creating a plan to identify those and really support the students in moving towards their goals in the individual progress reviews. In addition to that, information on college and careers has been added. So the importance of access to information on variety of careers from kindergarten through 12th grade is critical now. The new regulations require that we have a core curriculum of instruction provided by certified school counselors in college and career, social, emotional, and academic skills development based on multiple student competencies. As Nancy shared before, the CDOS standards, the SEL standards are all incorporated in this. I recognize that in some districts, it may not be the school counselor who is always the one providing instruction, but it should be overseen and created. That instruction should be created by and with school counselors. The additional program accountability pieces of the regulation include referral out to properly licensed certified PPS as appropriate for more targeted supports. All students have access to a certified school counselor in the school counseling program in grades 9 through 12. The accountability of an advisory council. This is critical, and it's something that some districts we recognize are struggling with. Identifying or creating an advisory council to provide feedback to the comprehensive counseling plan. We will have a separate workshop just specifically for that. And we'll talk more about that as we go through this process. As Nancy said, school plans and district plans should be posted on the district website. A new guidance document came out recently to help districts do this, and I'll go into that in a few slides. Their annual program outcomes report that should be made to the Board of Education, and that could be through a presentation to the board or a written document provided to the board. We will talk about that as well. So these are the highlights in green are the new regulations. The highlights in blue are the old regulations that have been in place. Are there any questions about those?
I had a quick question, just about the core curriculum instruction provided by a certified school counselor. Is there anything on how many lessons or anything that we should be looking at about how often that should be delivered?
That's a great question, and we get that often. There is no requirement regarding the number of lessons. What you might look at is a crosswalk between the health curriculum and other areas of the school curriculum. For example, Home and Careers might do some things in the middle school. If lessons are provided through different aspects to meet the mindsets and behaviors that ASCA delineates, then you're covered. Each district and each school has to look at what are the priorities of the needs of the students at this time in the current school year or in the upcoming school year. And what are you going to focus your lessons on to meet those needs? So, you know, for some levels, for example, elementary level may have more flexibility in going into classrooms and providing those lessons. Some schools may have a schedule that is flexible where a counseling lesson can be embedded into a win period or a what I need period, where you can address or provide the lessons, the instruction. At the high school level, it can sometimes be challenging in Regents or AP classes to get class time to go into those classes. But when there's a topic that aligns with what is being taught, sometimes that facilitates the instruction to occur in those subject areas to all students in that grade level. So there are a variety of ways to try to get to it, but there is no number of lessons that is a minimum standard that you have to meet.
Thank you.
Sure.
Alicia, you had a question?
Hi, yes, thank you. So you mentioned the core curriculum should align with the needs of the current school year, the student needs of the current school year. And that's how I was trained as well. But I kind of want some guidance on our district. We have 6 elementary schools, and we're trying to come up with a core curriculum together. but it's kind of difficult on the one hand because all of our buildings don't have the same needs at the same time. And what our district wants us to do is teach the same lessons at the same time during those months. So I was just wanting some guidance regarding to that.
So I understand that each school building may have very different demographics within a school district. The recommendation I would give you is to look at the topic areas and use the data from each school to see what are the needs and how can you embed those across the lesson. That's the best suggestion I can give you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
We also had a question in the chat. Are school districts required to have elementary school counselors? The answer is no, they are not required. But elementary students in grades K through 5 need to have access to school counselors. The other piece, just to add about this graphic, is the little icon that has the little people on it. Those are the areas that should be developed as a team approach as well. So while a lot of this falls to school counselors to implement, you need to be part of the development process, but you don't have to do all of this in isolation. It's good to have it, teachers and social workers, psychologists, nurses, administrators as part of the team too.
Absolutely. And in our district, what we found was, while the school counselors were most involved in creating the lessons with input from other stakeholders, when our social workers, psychologists, counselors, and administrators were available, they joined us in the classroom for those lessons. So we were all on the same page with what we were instructing the students on through our comprehensive plan, and any one of us could team up with another member of the group to provide the lesson in the classroom. And that worked out well. It was a shared responsibility, and we all had the common language then, as well as the classroom teachers.
That's ideal. We also have a question in the chat as to why these regulations do not apply to charter schools. I don't know that I have a good answer to that, other than the charter schools don't necessarily have to follow the Board of Regents regulations or the Commissioner's regulations. I believe it becomes a decision by each of the boards that oversee those charter schools. Bob, do you have anything more on that?
There might be a distinction between public charter schools and not public charter schools in regard to what's required and not required, but that's all I really know about it.
Thank you.
I'm going to move forward with the nuances of the regulation changes. I think the most important thing to realize is that we are required to review and update the plan annually. So the members of the team for each school year should be updated. The needs of the students in the school district in that year, for the coming year, will drive what lessons you're going to focus on, what topic areas you're going to focus on. These changes do not apply to BOCES to implement. Instead, for our BOCES students, it is a local decision as to how all students K-12 will have access to a certified school counselor, whether or not they're in a BOCES placement or the school district. Districts are also encouraged to use appropriate certification titles, and this may involve contract changes as contracts are negotiated. One of our big movements over the past few years with our past presidents and current president is our alignment and association with the New York State United Teachers Union. And we have talked about this at great length, that school counselors should be referred to as school counselors, not the old guidance counselor term, except for in areas like Buffalo or New York City where guidance counselor is still part of their regulation. So anytime we can get those updated within our individual school district contracts, teacher contracts, it is helpful. And we are encouraged to advocate for that. It's also important to utilize standards for all three domains of the school counseling program. So again, focusing on career and college readiness, academic skills development, and social emotional development. And we can look across all the standards that Nancy spoke about earlier to see how are those being met, where are those being met, and where are the gaps. So looking at that gap analysis and making sure that we're addressing those needs. Services to students can be provided by counselors, social workers, psychologists, teachers, nurses, and/or others in the collective care team. The core curriculum instruction must be provided by a certified school counselor and when implemented as part of the comprehensive developmental school counseling or guidance document program, it must be designed in coordination with a certified school counselor, developed by or under the direction of certified school counselors. So this is not something we can hand off to others and say, well, you create the plan and I'll go do the lessons. It should be, there should be certified school counselors involved in the development and the plan for how it will be implemented. Who will implement it, where, when, and how. It's really important that we are involved with that. Individual progress reviews, we've talked a little bit about. They must be done annually for students in grades 6 through 12 as part of the new regulations. This provides the opportunity to reflect on each student's educational progress, including their academic achievement, behaviors, social emotional development, college and career knowledge, and planning. For students with disabilities, the individual progress review plan should be consistent with the student's IEP, as Nancy was talking about earlier, and we had the question previously. Just to make sure we're not saying in the individual progress review, oh, this student plans to go to college, and the IEP says, oh, this student does not plan to go to college, they plan to enter the workforce. We want to make sure that whatever documentation there is on individual student is consistent with each other, and we have the most current and accurate information on both the IEP and the individual progress review plan. Lessons provided in classes and/or small groups addressing specific and relevant student competencies in career and college readiness, academic skills, and social and emotional can be delivered utilizing a co-teaching model with core discipline teachers. And that's where we can sometimes partner with the teacher based on the curriculum in a particular classroom, what the teacher is providing, and what is part of our plan to say, hey, we'd like to come in and partner with you to provide this lesson. When we can get teachers on board and using the same terminology and understanding the goals and objectives of our comprehensive plan, it's just reinforces the skill development for students throughout the school day. The comprehensive plan is best delivered as a team approach, as I said earlier, partnering with other members of our collective care team, including the school psychologists, school social workers, school nurses, even school administrators, as well as teachers. Each school in New York City will need to address how they will implement the program, ensuring that all students have access to a certified school counselor and that the plan is outlined in regulations. It's important that an annual process of gathering data, reviewing that data, and responding to the data is established, allowing ongoing program development that is directly responsive to student need. And this can be reflected in your program outcome report to the Board of Ed. So for instance, if your district endures a crisis situation and you are realizing that students need skills to manage their emotional response to the crisis, you may decide that a topic of a lesson in that coming months should be changed or included based on that need. And you can absolutely have the flexibility to do that. Okay, so using the data, whether it's a situation where a group of students' sense of belonging is not where we would hope it would be, and their response to survey says, they don't feel a sense of belonging in their school. That's something that needs to be addressed, and you can certainly create a lesson to address that need if that's what the data is showing you during the course of the school year. So feel free to modify and adjust, and then report out to your advisory council or your Board of Ed.
We do have some questions in the chat, but I'm going to hold those till the end because we may answer some of them as we go through the program.
Okay. Districts need to establish an advisory council that meets a minimum of 2 times each year. Membership is determined at the local level. And we'll talk a little bit more about the advisory council in future trainings. I will say that the advisory council can be something that is already in place as a multidisciplinary team. For example, a curriculum council or instructional council for a district may have the requisite members that an advisory council needs to have. So you could ask that existing council, the leadership for that existing council, could we utilize this council as our advisory council and come to report on our comprehensive plan, let's say in January and in June each year? And then that process and that team is already in place. The minutes are typically already in place, and the reporting to the Board of Ed based upon those minutes is already in place. So there's some ways we can simplify what is needed or what we need to do to meet the regulations, as long as there is a way to comply that might be outside the box. I'm going to go ahead now to describe the school district perspective. This is one of the handouts that Nancy sent as an attachment to your email for today's meeting. This is a document that was created by the New York State Education Department. Victor Rose is the person overseeing all of the PPS programming for state ed. He met with NYSCA leadership on a regular basis. For a number of years, he has done this. And what we found was that while the regulations came out in 2017 to be in place in 2019, we all know what happened shortly thereafter. And as Nancy said, she referred to it as many districts put this in the trunk of the car. We had other fish to fry. We had other areas of focus that suddenly needed our attention. And we kind of, in many cases across the state, districts kind of said, oh yeah, we'll get to that. We have to get back to that. Well, it's time to get back to that. And that's why we are providing these workshops this year. The State Ed Department has released this school district perspective. It's a guidance document that is on the NYSED website, and you now all have a copy in the attachment to today's email with this workshop link. So what happened in fall of 2023 was that the State Ed Department, in partnership with NYSCA, reviewed over 115 school district websites to see how many districts actually have their comprehensive plan on the website in accordance with the regulations. And the department in NYSCA found that only 42% of the district's websites that were reviewed randomly had a comprehensive program, and only 25% of those with a program were updated for the 23-24 school year. So we said it's time to revisit this and to help districts move forward in ensuring they are complying with the regulation. So the components of a district comprehensive school counseling program, we had talked about this. One of the first questions we received was, what's the difference? What does it need to have versus the school building programs? The district program requires that there is a counseling vision and mission statement. So K-12 counseling vision and mission statement from the district. We have to identify that we have created this plan according to the professional ethics and standards and competencies for school counselors that grounds us in our work. We need to say that the school counseling plan is driven by learning standards, the mindsets and behaviors from ASCA, as well as the SEL and CDOS standards. We need to state that we have an advisory council for the district and give a short description of the elementary, middle, and high school programs. And Victor did a great job of giving some samples in this document for you to use or tweak based upon what your district believes. And then at each level, you can link the individual schools' counseling plans, and we're going to talk more about what should be included in that. The district's comprehensive school counseling program mission and vision statements are often found right on the school website. Perhaps your district or Board of Ed has created their own mission and vision, and you may want to align that counseling program mission and vision to align with the district mission and vision. The professional ethics and standards and competencies are identified by ASCA, the American School Counseling Association, and there is a link in this document to look at those and to read about those. These are important because they provide a framework for the practice of school counseling and guide school counselors in their efforts to promote student success and well-being. We want people to understand that these lessons are not just randomly determined, they are data-driven. They are standards-driven. So we want them to know, and part of it is communicating our roles and responsibilities, that we are driven by these standards. Our work is driven by them, and it's important work, and it's meaningful work. You can see the links to each of the standards in this document. The data piece that schools counselors need to look at come in three forms. There's outcome data, which measures the impact and effectiveness of your school counseling program on student outcomes. So outcome data helps to assess the overall effectiveness of the counseling program in achieving its goals and objectives. It may include academic achievement on district assessments. It may look at daily attendance or chronic absenteeism rate after your lessons or interventions. It may look at the number of discipline referrals and the outcomes of those referrals and suspensions. It may look at social emotional development through appropriate screeners or assessments. How many were done? What were the outcomes of the students' responses? Perception data captures the subjective experiences and opinions of various stakeholders. So this is where gathering input from all stakeholders is important. Asking them what their perceived satisfaction levels are, the impact of the program on student well-being. It involves collecting feedback from students, families, teachers, school and district leaders, and other staff members. You may survey them, interview them, or have focus groups to gain that data. And then the process data is information about the activities and services delivered by a school counselor and the number of stakeholders you've served. Process data includes the number of classroom lessons, individual and group counseling sessions, crisis interventions, referrals that you've made, and student, parent, and other stakeholders who participate in the service delivery provided by a school counselor. It's very important that you have a handle on what you're doing, how often you're doing it, and what the outcome of those interventions are. We used to call them ticket out the doors, right? At the end of a lesson, you give a ticket out the door. What did students learn? How successful was that lesson? That's outcome data. It can be something as simple as looking at the data that you already have access to, the attendance rates, the discipline referrals. These are things that when you work together as a collective care team with our school nurses who often manage attendance numbers and attendance letters, your administrators who are dealing with the disciplinary component, and school counselors, social workers, and psychologists who are making referrals out for suicidal ideation or dealing with topics in school, in groups where numbers of students are struggling with the same issue. This is all data you can use in developing your plan and deciding what's most critical for you to focus on. The advisory council, as I said, is really something that we'll talk about in depth later. If you have any questions, that will be coming up, I think, in our 4th workshop. Any questions at this time?
Okay. So before we go into developing the district plan, I'm going to put a poll into the chat and ask that you fill it out. This tells us where you're at with the development of your school plan. So that should be in the chat. You see that in the chat? I don't think this poll's working, so we'll have to pass on this one. Okay, we'll move along. So with developing the district plan, sorry about that. We have this graphic that really illustrates the process of developing your program. It starts with defining the beliefs. So the red part is defining. So you're going to define your beliefs, your vision, and your mission, as well as the professional standards for school counselors and student standards. And these are the first aspects of the plan that you're going to work on. Some of these may already be done, as Mary had said, and the professional standards and student standards are available through ASCA. The next section is the blue section, and this is really the nuts and bolts of the development. So when you're developing the maps and calendars of activities, you should also include how your data is going to be collected. Planning the lessons for implementation along with using SMART goals and action plans for implementation will help in collecting data and also tracking the work that you do. If you're not sure how all of this is going to fit into your schedule, there is a use of time analysis document through ASCA that will help you analyze the time that you spend and help make room for the things that you need to do as part of this plan. And part of this includes managing the advisory council, which we'll discuss in another session. The next phase is the assessment phase. This includes how you assess your program, how students have access to school counselors and access to the school counseling program. It also includes reports that you would make to the Board of Education or the advisory reports and posting on the website. So most of this work, the management part, is the nuts and bolts of all of this. On the side, you'll see there's 2 columns about delivery, and this addresses the delivery of services. And this really addresses direct and indirect services that are part of the work that you do every day with students. There's also a QR code here. We'll send this graphic out, but there's a QR code for you to access it as well. So NISCA developed an outline of a sample plan format. We shared this during our summer sessions, but after SCD released the revised version of the district perspective, we revised our format as well to align with that document as well as the regulations. So we're going to talk more about this in the next 3 slides. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but this will be available also as a template or a outline for you to use. And any area that is asterisked on this document or on the future slides, next few slides, is something that is required by the Part 200 regulations and recommended as part of the district perspective document.
So the plan introduction includes 4 parts: a brief description of the school district, which you can find on the district website or in the Board of Ed section of your district website. It also includes the Board of Ed vision and mission and goals, the K-12 counseling program overview, which is a brief description of the district-wide counseling program, as well as a list of the members of the comprehensive plan team. And this may include the administrators who supported the development of that plan, and our other collective care team members, psychologists, social workers, nurses, who also participated in the development of the plan. So again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Use the resources that are available to you, either on the district website and from your Board of Ed. And just make sure that you update the list of members each year when you update your plan to reflect any personnel changes of who will be involved in that current school year. The next piece is the foundation and management of the plan. Again, it should reflect that our work is grounded in the foundation of the NYSED regulation part 100.2J. So a statement identifying the regulations that are covered within the plan. The school counseling vision, mission, and goals for the program that you hope to achieve that year. And again, this can highlight, doesn't have to be a laundry list of everything, can simply highlight the things that are most important to you that year. The student standards reflecting the ASCA mindsets and behaviors and the CDAW standards, and you can add those links right to your district plan. And the school counselor professional standards, again, these are for your review to look at, the ASCA professional school counselor competencies and ethical standards. Not that you would want to link that to your plan, that the community members would see, but for your own use and making sure that these are the guidelines, these are the guardrails of how you should be functioning, and making sure you align your practice within those. Nancy?
So this summer, when we did our sessions, we shared with you a number of different school districts' plans that had components of their plans that met the SED requirements. And we have a few more that I'm just going to show you one, and this is the overview. So on the website, let's see if it connects for me. You can see that this is Burnt Hills Boston Lake. They have a 5-page overview. And this includes a statement about the NYSED regulations that they're required to. It includes a statement about the professional standards and competencies. It does not give the link to it, but it does include a statement about that. It also talks about each of the components that they have included. It also includes their district mission, core beliefs, and key expectations for students, as well as district employees. It includes the K-12 counseling department mission and vision, and what the K-12 program overview is. It includes their counselor caseloads. This is not something that you have to do, but this plan, this overview does have that. And then it gives some details about some of the framework that they do. So this isn't to say that this is a approved program, because we don't have that ability to do that, but it's an example of something that you could do as an overview. Let me see if I can get back to the. So I'm not going to go into the others because for the sake of time, I'm going to save that, but they will be available for you to link to. And they're just plans that have good aspects of them that meet the criteria for state ed, but we have yet to find a plan that has really done all of that. And we're not in the business of evaluating plans at this point either. So moving on to delivery accountability and the school counseling program map. This is the last part of the process that we're going to talk about today. These areas that are required to be included in the plan have an asterisk. So the program activity or service is required. Also part of that is the NYSED regulation that is being met by that program activity or service and the program objective. Also, the student standards that are being met need to be included in that and part of the delivery and accountability. You should have a timeline for when you're going to deliver these things. So your timeline can be vague. It can be by the month. It can be by the fall, spring, winter time period. It just needs to be a general timeline of when you're going to provide these services. Also, what the student focus is going to be for each of the activities that you're going to be delivering. Staff resources needs to be included as part of that. It should tie to the district program or goal. And then you should have assessment as part of that as well, so that you can collect program data, because this is the data that you're going to use when you're doing some of your outcomes reports. And this just is the difference between the district and the building plans. So your district plan is going to be a little bit more, have more information in it because it's going to cover all areas of the district. Your building plan is going to be specific to the building and the grade levels that you have within that building. So it will be tied to the district plan, but it will not have as much information as the district plan is going to have. Mary, did you want to add anything on this one?
I was just going to say that the district plan is really the umbrella, and each of the building plans falls under it. So you can be very specific regarding the focus at each building for the school year. What your focus is for the assessment, the building goals, and the goals of the program. Our next slide is a mapping your plan tool that Dr. Carol Dahir, a professor and former chair of the school counseling department at NYIT, created. Carol is an amazing resource to our NYSCA board and counselors across the state and across the world. She has written a number of books. She's been on the ASCA project director for the development of the national standards for school counseling programs. She's a Fulbright researcher who brought transformational school counseling to Japanese educators and to Turkey. This lady is amazing. And this is a tool she developed. She vetted in her NYIT counseling educator programs. And she also vetted it across a number of schools throughout the state to look at how can we simplify what districts felt was a very daunting task to identify the program activities, the direct and indirect services that they provide. So you can take this tool and glean from it what you would like to help you develop your plan as you map it out. So as you get started, the next slide indicates that you need to first determine who will lead the development of the plan. Sometimes this is a director of counseling, a coordinator of counseling, a department chair, but we really feel that having an administrator on board with you to lead the development of this plan is best practice along with the counselors. Identify your team members, whether they include school counselors, psychologists, social workers, nurses, or administrators, school level or district level. Gathering input from all your stakeholders. Say, what are you seeing as the greatest needs for our students? What do you see that they need that we could embed in our plan? And then determine if those are your priorities as well. Gathering that district information from the website or the Board of Ed page to include in your plan is important. Making sure that all the information that is presented aligns with what the district website says. Establish planning meeting dates. You know, I've heard from counselors across the state, we just don't have time to do this. This is on top of everything else on our plate. It's too much. What I would say is start with just putting dates on a calendar that you will commit to meeting. And once you get those meetings started, it will get the ball rolling. So establishing those planning meeting dates to develop your vision and mission if it's not already done, or to talk about the data that you have access to or that you need access to, and then review that data to establish your goals. As a team, develop the plan based on those required elements. So this is kind of a quick and dirty breakdown for you of how to get started.
So I'm going to come back to questions because we are running out of time. So our next session is going to be February 5th. It will be on the requirements of implementing an advisory committee and the required reports. On March 12th, we'll cover utilizing data tools, reviewing data, and using data for reports and program planning. And then on April 2nd, we will have a topic from the group, or we'll discuss annual progress reviews, and it's possible that we may be able to do both in that last session. I want to thank you, and we'll come back to questions, but I want to make sure that you guys have my email and Mary's email in case you have additional questions. I'm also going to pop into the, I think I'm going to pop into the chat a poll on evaluation. So if you could fill that out, that would be great, and we'll go back to that. And at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we'll take questions from the chat. We'll go back to those questions, and you can stay on as long as you like to ask questions. So in the chat, we had questions about, let me go back to them. If a district purchases SEL curriculum, can they just mention that in the plan, or do they need to include the details of these lessons? And I think you can just mention it in the plan if you're using it. You might want to outline what that's going to cover as far as by grade level. So if you're doing specific activities, you're going to want to include that as your grade level activities. Mary, do you have some suggestions on that?
Well, you can identify it in the mapping your plan slide, that form that Dr. Dahir created, to identify the lesson topic and then what learning standards that lesson is addressing. Okay.
Another question was, is the annual outcomes report at-risk data, or is it more robust? So when we get to our discussion on advisory council and the data, we'll talk more about this, but the annual outcomes report is going to focus on those areas that you have identified as goals and how you're collecting data to determine whether or not the goals have been met and the needs of the students have been met. So it's not a right or wrong answer. It's not at risk. At-risk data may be part of your plan and part of what you're addressing. So I don't have a clean answer for that one.
The next question was about the annual progress review, individual annual progress review. And there are guidelines. There's a form on the ASCA website, and I believe it's on the NISCA website as well, with topics that should be addressed as far as the strengths of the student, the academics, attendance, discipline. That's a very useful tool if you take a look at that website.
Then we had one on the duration of annual reviews, and there's really not a requirement on the duration. Most counselors that we have spoken to across the state this summer said that their meetings run 20 to 30 minutes. And they might begin their meeting before the student comes in by filling out a Google form of some kind to help give them some background before the student comes in to their office. So there's a lot of ways that you can deliver that information as well as receive information from the students. And we'll talk more about that when we talk about the annual review process. Same for the next one. There's some questions that we have that you may want to ask that we'll share, but there's not a template. So then there's a question about, do you have a document that separates the ASCA mindset and behavior standards by grade band, elementary, middle, and high school? The template itself helps you identify where you're going to, where those areas are being addressed.
I made myself a note to try to track one down because I think Carol might have one. So I made myself a note. We'll put it in our pile when I find it.
Could you also share the annual individual progress review template as well? I'll look for
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of districts have created a template that they use in their districts, and some districts have shared them, like through a BOCES or through collaboration with other districts near them. So you see some common ones popping up. I also understand that some of the student management systems are including a template, for lack of a better term, to use when you're working with students each year.
Right. Then we had a question about, are all three data types, outcome, process, perception, mandatory?
I think it's best practice as we look at each of the data types. The perception is really important to consider. What do people think, and what do you think, and what are you actually doing? So I think that's really important, as is, of course, the outcome data. The progress process data is very important to let people know what you're doing and when you're doing it. So that, again, is on that form that Carol DeHere created, the Map in Your Program.
Then we have, who is responsible for organizing, leading, and hosting the advisory council? For large districts, should there be a district advisory council and sub-councils? So who is responsible for organizing and leading is a local decision. It is not required to be a school counselor. In large districts, we've had this discussion over the summer, and you would probably have a building level council as well as a district level council. But again, that's something that's more of an individual local decision to make. Our district is concerned about creating a separate document to the degree that this is defined. We want to be very careful about not creating a silo plan and coming at this from a team-based MTSS wraparound perspective. Okay.
I just wanted to share, one of the resources you provided was the original guidance document, Nancy, as an attachment to today's. If participants look at Appendix C, that has the components of an annual individual progress review, the guidelines for what should be addressed during those meetings. So that might be helpful to folks.
And we'll be sending out the materials after this meeting. Then we had a question on the best time to review data. And that kind of depends on how you write your plan and when you are collecting that data and when you have your advisory council meetings. So it's more or less determined by the plan in which you write and how you set up your timelines and your dates for reporting. think you want to get some baseline data too, from probably at the start of the year or at the end of the year.
There was a question about templates for collecting the data. There are programs that some districts use to do that. Others, Google Calendar can track data as far as your phone calls, your use of time. So there are some resources available if folks want to look into those.
Then we had a comment about the district is very small. We only have a middle high school counselor and an elementary counselor. We have a district social worker that does work with both of us. How much should she participate in the creation of our plan? Since the plan is really intended to be developed as a team, I would include her as part of that team if she's assisting with supporting the work that you do and working with the same students in a lot of cases that you do. It would definitely be to your advantage as a district to include that person in the plan process.
Finally, there was a question about the requirement that all schools in the district teach the same topics at the same time. No, there's no requirement for that. That's up to the district's discretion.
And I think it would depend on the demographics of each school too, because they may be different depending on the size of the district. And that's it for questions in the chat. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you on February 5th, where we'll be talking about the Advisory Council and annual reports. And we hope that you have a great evening and stay warm, everyone. It's getting chilly out there.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody. Thanks for coming today after your work day.
Go
Thank
Whales.
you.